Okay, it's 2:00. Let me verify with Amanda. Are we ready to go? Looks like we have a quorum.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. This is Kimberly Petty, and we do have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Kimberly. So for our item number 2, it is the approval of the February 27th meeting summary. Do I have a motion of approval?
Ms. Ed Collins, move for approval.
Thanks, Ed. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Bob. All in favor, just say aye.
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 Sounds good. Any opposed? All right, hearing none. We go to item number 3. And Gary, are you ready for this?
Sure. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. So we had our latest meeting of the subcommittee last week. We actually had some really good news from the consultants. They worked an arrangement with Del Valley School District to begin taking a look at utilizing school pool in the fall. So we've kind of prioritized at this point, a subcommittee's kind of prioritized now school pool, essential worker outreach, congested corridors, and guaranteed ride home. And we'll kind of work through those over the next year and a half-ish or so. But again, we've got Del Valley School District that's on board with initializing a program at Del Valley Elementary School, and then by the fall, they're hoping to roll it into 2 or 3 additional schools. So we are excited. We think the subcommittee's been productive. We believe that it's probably time to take it to the policy board and get their authorization for us to continue to move the program forward. So Nirav had an emergency come up and is not able to join us today. So we've got questions. I'll do my best to answer them. But we're looking for this committee to move us forward to take it to the policy board. Be happy to answer your questions.
All right, I don't see any hands up. I'll ask you a question, Gary. So on the 4 that you've identified as your focus areas, can you describe a little bit about what those strategies entail in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, the school pool will really be, it's really an effort to take the place of students that don't have school busing. So it's parents that are having to take the kids to, and they're within whatever the region is of the individual school district or districts, in this case, Del Valley, that don't have school busing. So it's an effort to take the place. It's a bit complicated. We'll continue working with the consultant, but basically they'll set up a process by which parents that are interested in sharing rides would register. You would be able to see on a map where those folks are, so that they will kind of be the touch point to allow folks to communicate with one another. It gets a bit tricky with the school thing. Certainly a lot of our concern and consideration was around safety and liabilities and things like that. So we really want to just put parents in touch with other parents so that they can make those, develop those relationships and get comfortable with other parents if they're going to do that kind of carpooling. Beyond that, essential worker outreach gets a little more difficult. We really haven't discussed much of the detail of the next 3, other than just identifying that we think that that's probably the most prudent opportunity in the next year plus to access the funds.
All right, sorry about that. That sounds great. Thanks for that, Gary. So Cole?
My question is this scope of work related to the item in item 5 of the TIP amendment, where $4 million is being requested in CRP funding? And would this scope of work be implemented with that item?
That question would be a staff question.
I can answer that, Gary. So one of the tip requests in the tip amendment item that Cole's referring to, we do include the funding request for this item. So this will be a separate item that we'll take to the board and request the carbon reduction funding for this program extension in May. We wanted to go ahead and put it in the amendment cycle just so the public has a chance to comment on it, but it is contingent on that separate item being approved. So, but it's my understanding the scope of work will be funded with the $4 million that we're requesting for this program. So, yeah. Hope that makes sense.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks.
Ed?
Yeah, I'm part of the subcommittee, and one of the things that we really didn't get into a lot of details is what kind of raised the question I think that Cole has done is that, what is kind of the level of effort, and the $4 million really didn't come into that. This program, when you really look at it, it's not a new program. It's been with CAMPO since the 90s, and one thing that was done is the partnerships that were developed over time and the different advocates that came out of those programs. And so that mobility is one of those entities that I would say that might be able to help us implement some of these programs, and we just haven't really gotten down into that level of detail. And that is a concern, is that we see like a $4 million amount, and then maybe it needs to be fleshed out a little bit better. But the dollars that would go towards a program, we're kind of having to kind of start to rebuild again. I think it's had a stop and start history so far in the past several years, and those programs that have been identified have come out of the subcommittee from recommendations from the consultants. They're your typical type things that you see in different programs, and but how do you implement those? How much staffing that's needed? Those conversations maybe are not done by the subcommittee, and it may be something that the CAMPO staff may want to kind of flesh that out as before going to the board for those dollars.
Kathy?
Hi, everybody. I'm also on the subcommittee, and I just wanted to add a little detail that we got from our last meeting. So on the essential worker outreach, that's primarily going to be focused, first of all, on the manufacturing and transportation sectors. And so that will be helping these folks. It'll be kind of, at least part of it, similar to what School Pool, a ride matching initiative, as well as helping people find other ways to get there or ways to get there at all. It may involve transit or things like that, but really reaching out to the workers and also the employers. A big side of that is on the employers. And as Ed mentioned, movability may be able to help with that, etc. And then the congested corridors, that is to really focus on doing outreach and putting programs in place along specific corridors that have a congestion problem. And the first one that we would start with is Palmer Lane. And I believe that's the full extent of Palmer Lane from 290 to 1431 was the goal. I will say at our last meeting, the consultants did show us very detailed schedules. There's also on the list large event, trip planning and reduction, and I think maybe construction outreach and some other things. And the consultants did show us very detailed schedules for the next 4 years and what would roll out when. And as Gary said, the first three are the school pools, and that was going to be for not only public schools, but also charter schools. The consultant was is waiting to hear from a charter school in Pflugerville to see if they want to try to do that. So school pools, essential outreach, and the congested corridors would start the first year, but then they expand and go to other programs as we go along. There was park and ride outreach involved in the later years, and some discussion on coordinating the park and ride outreach with some of these carpooling efforts because you can use park and rides for a carpool meetup place in addition to a place to catch the bus. So there's a lot more information. It's too bad Nirav isn't here today, but it is pretty well thought out, I think. So just wanted to let everybody know that.
Yeah, and I'd quickly, thanks Kathy for that. I'd quickly also add that part of our essential outreach, worker outreach, we're talking as well, other than large employers, is also chambers of commerce. So that, again, a lot of it still is developing how we're going to kind of roll this stuff out. And the calendar that we've got that Kathy referred to goes out into 2025, I believe, or late 2024. And so, our initial shot here at the school pool, and then quickly followed up with work on the essential worker. That'll get us well into 2024, we believe, with those efforts.
Thanks. I think go to Cole and then Ashby. So Cole,
Yeah, I wanted to add, thanks, Ed, for making that point. I definitely think it would be helpful to get a more detailed cost breakdown of the strategies when that item comes separately. So this scope of work is kind of in advance of seeing the more details. So I think that's extremely helpful to have. But I did want to ask, is there anything from the regional TDM plan that was recommended that isn't on this list of strategies?
Nothing that I'm aware of where we've narrowed the strategies down. I think, Cole, your comment there also reminded me. One of the things we also discussed is how, developing the mechanism to measure success on the program. So that's something that we had a lengthy discussion about last week as well. What does that matrix look like to put the pieces, the metrics in place to be able to define whether or not the program is successful and what does that measure. So we'll continue to work on those efforts as well, and you'll see that rolled out as we continue to move forward.
Ashby.
Thanks, Lori. So, hold on, let me find my camera so you aren't talking to a blank screen. So, okay, that didn't work. So, thanks, Gary and Kathy for going over those details. I also wanted to add, in addition to the activities that Gary and Kathy talked about, we will also have to purchase some data to do some of the activities that are listed in the particular. There's some origin destination information that we'll need to implement some of the programs, and some of it may the purchase of some of that data that we can't get through existing TxDOT contracts may come out of the 4 million. But right now we've not done that. We've been taking it from other accounts. But just wanted to keep that in mind. So we're, especially on some of the congested corridors, we need OD data to get to some of that. Oh, and then the last thing. So one of the things I've been kicking around for a few years, and I'm not introducing something new for the 4 million. I'm just saying this is something I'm kicking around. I might ask to have it as part of the 4 million. I might not. But when you look at the travel demand model, one of the things in there is special events. And we have so many special events that I no longer consider them to be special events in terms of one-off things, because they happen so frequently for us, but they have big impacts on traffic. So I have been having conversations with Texas Transportation Institute about how we might want to look at that in the model and then couple that with this TDM program, but also with some of the other work we have ongoing.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ashby. And that's frankly why large event carpools or service is on our list to move forward. And that's probably the one that's kind of up in the air right now. We think there might be an opportunity for us to make some positive progress on that relatively quick, but it can get a little more complex. So,
Okay, thanks, Gary.
yes, sir.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Ashby. Bob?
I was intrigued by your comment that you were going to include all of Palmer Lane from 290, all of the roadway, which goes 1431. And I was laughing because the road actually goes all the way back up north of 35. The TxDOT marking of it stops at 1431. And so I was curious as to why you would leave off Cedar Park and Liberty Hill just north of 1431. So
Yeah, I think that.
I mean, there could be good, valid reasons, but you might just take a look and see if there's justification to include it or exclude them, whatever the subcommittee thinks.
Yeah, good comments, Bob. I think the reference that Kathy made to 1431 has thus far been actually ties back to what Ashby was just talking about. It's where we can get data that's available in the TxDOT section, and that certainly was never intended to exclude the communities to the north. So good point. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, this is an action item to recommend these next steps, the scope of work to go forward to the policy board. So do I have anyone ready to make a motion for recommendation?
I'll move that we move forward with this. This is Kathy.
Kathy?
This is Emily. I'll second.
Thanks, Emily. All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, do I have anyone opposed? All right, hearing none. We will move forward with that recommendation. Item number 4, Ryan?
Thanks. Hey, so we are just bringing back the 2023 performance measure target updates. So on this slide, y'all saw this last time, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, but just wanted to remind everyone that it's really just kind of a federally mandated strategic approach that we kind of incorporate into everything that we do as an MBO, and adopting regional targets or targets every single year is something that we've been doing for, I think, the last 7 years. So, if you'll go to the next slide, please. And just a reminder that really the performance measure goal areas, they were set by Congress through MAP 21 and these 7 areas on the left. And then FHWA and FTA set their respective performance measures regarding those goals and goal areas. And then the DOTs and MPOs alike set targets in these areas, and then we incorporate those into our plans and our programs. If you go to the next slide. So this is a summary. We do have a couple of updates from the last time I presented this. Last time I had only received the safety performance measures. So that on the left is the same, but we did receive PM2 and PM3 updates from TxDOT. So those are updated as well. All of those are going down, and then we are recommending keeping the transit asset management TAM targets the same, as well as the transit safety targets. So pretty straightforward. There is more information in the performance measure report itself. Obviously, this is the summary document. A couple of things I wanted to point out in the performance measure report itself. For safety, we adopt the calendar year targets, but there's also a rolling year 5-year average that TxDOT targets. The calendar year target is the number we actually have to hit during that actual year, which is why we recommend the calendar year targets. But there's been discussion and some back and forth about whether or not we should adopt the calendar year versus the rolling 5-year average target. Based on what I know of it, I think the calendar year is the most appropriate. So just wanted to point that out. And then pavement and bridge conditions, PM2 and 3, TxDOT sets a 2 and 4-year targets. We are adopting the 2-year target because they come back and refresh those targets every 2 years. So there'll be a new 2 and 4-year target that they go by, but we're adopting the 2-year target right now. So pretty straightforward though. And on the last slide, I just want to remind everyone these are state targets, and so they reflect the state. But if you want to look and see how we're doing specifically as a region, we have our performance measure dashboards regarding safety, PM2 and 3. You can really take a deep dive to see how our region is doing in those as well. So, but that's really it. It's pretty straightforward. Obviously, it's an annual thing that we do. So with that, I'll request that the TAC make a recommendation to the policy board regarding the 2023 updates. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Ed, I think your hand was up first.
Well, Ryan, I may have asked this question before, but who was the audience for the report? I asked that. I found, having to go back and reference the performance data dashboard. I would think that maybe, at least an appendix of maybe taking a screenshot would help people who are kind of visually oriented, like myself, looking at, you look at those numbers, go, what does this really mean? But if you look on the dashboard, then you do see if it's going up or down. The other thing is about definitions that are used. There's one in the transit about the ULB, and I didn't, I'm in transit and I didn't know what that meant. So I had to look it up. It's useful life benchmark for a vehicle.
Benchmark, yeah.
Yeah, so some of those terms and definitions, it may be helpful to have in appendix, just a definition of terms, but also, what is it, what we're trying to find out through these measures, and then also, screenshots of the particular dashboard page would be, I think, helpful.
Okay, yeah, we can certainly look in that. And so, to your point, though, I think the main audience the way we've done the report, and it's stuff like this that I find really useful, what y'all want to see in the report, because I typically just gear it towards FHWA and FTA who look at that to make sure that we're just adopting things the way we're supposed to and meeting those requirements. But I do think over time, and especially with the dashboard, want to make this more public facing and make it more useful for the public. And I think that's a really good point because, yeah, I had to do the same thing with UAB the first time I saw that. And there's a lot of good information out there, fact sheets from FTA and FHWA that I can incorporate in here. So I'll definitely beef up the appendix before we take it to the board next month, if that works.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Thanks, Ed. Nadia?
I guess I have some questions about the transit safety measures and whether or not those, it looked like they were missing. And is that something that you get from Cap Metro or CARTS, or how are those values populated?
Yeah, no, I get those from Cap Metro, and I get them actually from Round Rock, San Marcos, and Cap Metro. So 3 providers that are direct recipients of FTA federal funds are responsible for sending those in. So, y'all haven't set any targets on those particularly. I haven't seen targets from Cap Metro this year, but I did get San Marcos and Round Rock, and both of those remained unchanged from the previous year.
So do we need to send them to you? Because I'm pretty sure we have targets.
Yes, I did send a request, and I didn't receive anything in response. So if y'all have those, please do, and I can update those.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't know if this is the right place, but who did you send the request to so that I can make sure?
I think it was Susan. I'll have to go back to my email. So I'll forward you the email.
That would be great. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Nadia. Cole?
Thanks, Ryan. I noticed on the safety dashboard that we include maximum goals for the region. Is there a reason why we're not adopting regional targets, but but we're including regional goals that are based on the tech targets?
That I don't. I'd have to see what you're talking about on the dashboard. I'll talk with Neera about that, but I will say that we do the state targets just because we may eventually, once we go through the safety, the SS4A planning grant and update our regional plan, we've looked at setting our own safety targets that are regional. And what that ecosystem would look like to track that on an annual basis. And right now, we think the appropriate thing to do is just do the state targets. But I think we'll eventually move towards setting our own targets if we have the resources to do that. But I'll look some more into the regional goals that you're talking about. I'm not quite sure what those are.
Right. Yeah. It just says that they're based on scaled down targets adopted by TxDOT for our region. But it is helpful to know that I guess we can look forward to developing our own regionally specific targets as we develop the regional safety plan.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a good thing for us to look at. And I don't know, Will, if you want to jump in, but I know we kind of had a safety plan kind of drafted before the SS4A thing came through, and we had Jeff at TTI, Jeff Kaufman, who's spoken here before about it, took a stab at what our targets would look like if we were trying to achieve the road to zero by 2050 that the state has set, like what we could do in the region. And so we do have those numbers. I think one of the things we quickly found out, and I think it's very clear in the dashboard, is that we're way off our targets. So we're way above what anything that we would set would be. So that's something we're going to have to discuss in context, I guess, through the SS4A process. How realistic do we want to be, considering we can't even hit what we would hypothetically adopt for the region already. So but that's a whole other conversation, I think. But
yeah, most of the trends have not shown a decline in the per capita crash rates. They've been increasing for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So between Jeff's work and the upcoming regional component of the SS4A Safety Action Plan, we want to get a better handle on that trend.
Yeah.
And what it means for what we can expect in the future. But also, I think more than anything, that continues to establish the need for a safe systems approach to safety funding.
Well, thanks for that additional information. I think that was a point that I didn't realize, and maybe the region doesn't realize how far off we are. And when we continue to adopt TxDOT's numbers, that kind of gets hidden, how poorly our region's performing in comparison.
I will say, I think the whole state, and I think across the country, everybody's numbers are really bad since really the pandemic. I think 2021, 2022, we're going in the wrong direction. So, but and I think this really kind of gets also to the point of what performance measures are in a lot of ways. I mean, these targets are really just kind of a benchmark to where we can gauge our successes, and outside of that, they're not really. I wouldn't say they're not meaningless, because they are. It really gives us that perspective that we need in order to make good decisions. So I think that's just important to note. Yeah.
All right, good discussion. I know Jeff's presentation was kind of depressing when we got it, so lots of work to do. Okay, so this also is an action item. So I'm looking for a motion for recommendation to the policy board.
Gary Hutter, so moved.
Okay. A second? I'll second it. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Right. Any opposed? Okay, hearing none. We're speeding along this time. Item number 5, TIP amendments.
Thank you, and thanks for that earlier item. So this is the spring amendment cycle. Again, for anybody, this is just our regular scheduled opportunities that sponsors can submit to make changes to the regional transportation plan and the transportation improvement program. So this is really kind of the first time we've had a discussion about it. So I'll briefly go through the amendment requests that we did receive. And then the schedule here on the slide you're looking at, have already gone out for community outreach. Everything's posted online, the online open house. That's going to go from March 20th to April 20th. And so we did shift the schedule earlier. I think one of the things that we got from last time is we want to make sure that we have the community outreach portion done before we bring it back to the Technical Advisory Committee for a recommendation. So the online open house, I think we actually got it up before March 20th. But anyways, it'll end on April 20th. We do have 2 in-person open houses. We have one at April 3rd that we're actually going to have here at our CAMPO offices downstairs in the lobby. And then on April 10th, prior to the board meeting and public hearing in April, on April 10th, we're going to have an in-person meeting then as well. And so we'll have that public hearing also at the policy board. Then we'll bring it back for recommendation along with we'll have all the public comments done for y'all's consideration. And then we will take it to the policy board for adoption in May. So I do want to talk about the actual amendments. There's quite an extensive list. And I'll just go through these briefly, but hopefully, so if you'll go to the next slide, Amanda. Most of them you'll see are kind of I-35 related. We also have Cat Metro submitted 2. They got 2 grants regarding paratransit accessible vehicle purchase and then some charging infrastructure. So those are 2 FTA grants that we're putting in the TIP. And then 35, there's a lot going on with 35, so I just want to kind of briefly talk about, to sum it up really, is that they've got a lot of breakout projects that they're going to start in 2024. A lot of these are drainage projects that need to get done before the main construction starts, and so what we're doing is spinning those projects off. It's all of these that are kind of under the original amount that was approved, but we're just kind of breaking these projects out and adjusting as needed. And so, and as you can see on the right, the amendment request, we tried to make it as detailed as possible. I think that was one of the questions. I think, Ed, you had mentioned this last time, wanting a little more detail on what the amendments entailed. And so hopefully everything on the right takes care of that. So if you'll go to the next slide, please. We've got a couple other projects. We've got the 360 project at 2222, which is a diverging diamond, and then the 360 at Courtyard Drive. These were refunded in the 2023 UTP and are going to be going to construction in the TIP window, so those are being added. Hero Way, we did a functional classification for this. This is a locally funded project that we're going to put in the STIP and TIP so that it can get functionally classified, which the functional classification has already been approved. And then we've got a couple other things. And so to Cole's point on the earlier item, we do have 2 items that we're going to be requesting carbon reduction funding for at the May meeting. We wanted to go ahead and put them in the amendment cycle so the public could have a chance to comment on them, and so that we could put them in the TIP should that approval, should they be approved by the policy board. So those are contingent. One is the $4 million program for the Transportation Demand Management Program, and then another one is an ITS project that was previously deferred. And it was one of the ones that we had, when we had the discussion about the CRP funding earlier, we had identified some potential eligible projects on the deferred list. Going through that process with TxDOT, we were able to identify one, which is an ITS project along SH71, essentially from the Oak Hill Y to B Cave, and so this will be related to that. So this is a deferred project that we're looking to refund with CRP funding. So if anybody has any questions about that, let me know. But we'll certainly bring that back with more detail, and especially with the TDM program as well. So outside of that, we're just pulling a couple other projects out, and I think that's really it. So that's all of the amendments. If y'all have any questions about them, please let me know, and I can certainly get this for you. But yeah, we did not have any RTP specific amendments requested. They're all TIP amendments. But again, we do amend RTP based on the TIP amendments. So, so we'll be making those changes to RTP as well. But outside of that, I'll take any questions, but that's the end of the presentation.
All right, thanks, Ryan. I did find the amendment request notes very helpful. So I'll start off first with Ed.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. Yeah, this is perfect. I think it provides not only the TAC members information that's helpful, but also for the public to understand. I did have a question on the FM 1660. That product may have been locally funded, but it might be a good note in there because the two products below those that are being removed from the list do provide kind of an explanation. It's not that the product's not going to be done, it's being put into product development. And I didn't know if the FM 1660 improvements could have a similar type note.
Yeah, and that's I can certainly add some more information on that. I think that was, because those are moving forward. I think there's 4 projects being removed from the TIP. All of them are moving forward one way or another. I think the Caldwell County one is being moved forward. It's still in development. It's just pushed out a little bit. And then the 1660 projects, I think that has something to do with the pass-through funding agreement, but those are still being moved forward by the county, is my understanding on that. So I'll add some additional information on that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Cole.
Thanks, Ryan, for providing additional information about the projects identified for CRP funding. So can we expect those items to go to the board at the same time that the TIP is going to the board for approval?
Yeah. So my intent is to make the request first for the CRP funding, and then we'll do the amendment cycle right after that, both in May. So we'll do them back to back, but the CRP comes first on the agenda in my mind, and that way they can approve all the amendments as needed. So, but same meeting, yes.
Okay. So that's helpful. So I guess one of the questions or requests I had was for a little additional information on the project scope for those projects in particular. I know that the SH71 ITS was deferred, but it was previously funded with Category 2 funding. It was also, that project included RM 620 out to Cedar Park, and it previously was awarded 10.5 million. So I think having additional information about the scope of this project, which doesn't include RM 620, for $7 million, basically understanding what were the cost adjustments, because it doesn't look like it's simply a subtraction of the RM 620 limits. So clarification on that would be helpful. And along with that, I think the project description for ATMS is important because while ATMS may reduce emissions per vehicle, I would like to ensure that there's not an overall increase in carbon emissions due to the increase in vehicle capacity and vehicle miles traveled. So as this in particular project goes to seek funding for CRP funds, we need to make sure that it meets the intent of the CRP program.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point. I actually forgot to mention this, is that we're going to take the scope that they developed for TDM, and then once I get additional information from TxDOT, we're going to try and put this in the moves model so that we can have those carbon reduction numbers for the board in May. So we'll certainly look to model those. And that's a really good point, though, because I think it's tying it back to the intent of the carbon reduction program and making sure that we have those numbers. Obviously, the plan is going to put together a fuller process, but I think having something like that is important. So we'll certainly have that. And we'll bring this item back, I think, in the April TAC meeting, and we'll go through all of this information as we get it. So y'all are more, obviously all these questions will be answered for you before that May meeting. But that's a really good point, though. Thank you.
Thanks. And then my last question, unrelated, is about the I-35 projects. And I was curious if those changes are reflective of the preferred alternative in the DEIS, and whether, if changes occur in the FEIS, would we expect to have this item back in the fall amendment cycle?
I'm gonna defer to text out on that. I believe the drainage projects, at least, I'm gonna let text out answer this, but I think they have to get done no matter what the alternative is. There's Heather. But if Heather's on, I'll let her answer that.
Yeah, Heather has her hand up even, but we may have lost her. There she is. No. While we're waiting for Heather, remind me, how much was the total CRP funding that was coming in?
So we get around, what was it, 4.5 a year. And so these requests together, between the plan, the TDM program, and the IPS project, that's right at what we have for the first 3 years, I think. And then, but it's in perpetuity, so over the 5-year period, we're going to get just over $22 million. It's very similar to the TASA funding amount, so around 4.5 a year.
Hey, I think this will work. I had to join from my phone. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Hey,
cool.
Heather.
Okay, I'm on here twice, I think. So my hand's up on one, but I'm talking through the other. So I'll answer the I-35 question first, and then I'll answer the ITS question. In terms of, actually, as a matter of fact, Cole, we're going to have to go back in the November revision, because there's a little bit of a catch up on, what's currently in the 23 UTP and then what's going to get into the 24 UTP. So for consistency, we have to kind of make each of those line up at the right time. So we will be coming back in November to clean it all up. But if I can send Ryan a clear picture of what we're doing for this cycle, and then also the November cycle. And to answer your question, we have 4.5 billion, and I think we programmed 400 million for the March letting, and so we have several projects letting in 24. Then we have then we have the Cap Metro work in September of 24, which is really fiscal year 25. But then our major, like, couple $1 billion packages will be in fiscal year 26. So as we get into more detailed design for those projects, we'll get better defined estimates. And so right now, what you'll find in the November revision is that we're still on the 4.5 billion. We're still estimating 4.5 billion because it's a high level estimate. And any changes that we've anticipated in the FEIS aren't significant enough to move that $4.5 billion dial, if you will. Does that make sense?
Sounded good to me.
Okay. And then on 71, yes, those deferred projects on 360 were previously funded, and we took them in our program called Rack and Stack, which is pretty much like plans on the shelf. We pulled them into this fiscal year, so they'll be letting in May. But what happened is that we just used that original estimate from the original deferral. We were finding that it was way under budget, so we had to cut limits. And so what we did is we cut the limits on 360 from Hudson Bend to just south of Anderson Mill, if you will, to fill in that gap. And then for the 620 project, for the 620 project in Lakeway and BKs, we're going to be adding the ITS to that project. So we refunded, we funded those, and now we're funding the 71 section. So it'll ultimately create that full connection, 71 and 620.
Does that sound good, Cole?
So for now.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Heather, for jumping in. All right, this was just information only. Anybody have any questions outstanding? Okay, well, we'll have some more discussions on this next month. So moving to item number 6.
Okay. Thanks. So I just wanted to give a quick update on the 5310 program. So everyone, hopefully you're familiar with this program. It's something we do. Now we're doing it every 2 years, but it's really just a funding program from FTA that specifies mobility for seniors and persons with disabilities. And so we fund programs that serve those needs. And so we do a project call for the urbanized area. Capital Metro is the designated recipient and program administrator, but we do the project selection process. And really, I just want to update everyone on where we are. If you'll go to the next slide, we received applications at the beginning of this month, the deadline. We got about 11 applications, totaling about $3 million worth of requests. We're still working through those, going through the readiness assessment. One thing, we were originally taking it and trying to get it to the May Policy Board for approval, but we're going to shift the schedule back 1 month for approval in June 23 based on the amount of work that we're having to go through to get it done. We thought we might need an extra month in there to get that done. So hopefully there's no issues there, but we're going to bring that back for the Technical Advisory Committee as for a recommendation on the process. I know a few TAC members have submitted applications as well, so I just want to be mindful of the recommendation being on the process itself. And so if you'll go to the next slide, just want to talk about that we do have about $2.7 million available for funding. And so this is just a quick summary of everything that we look at, and this will go out with the slide, but hopefully everyone's familiar with it. But so yeah, that's really it. And well, on the next slide is the evaluation process. So right now we're going through the eligibility and readiness evaluation, just making sure that we have everything. And then we have an independent scoring panel of 5 individuals that will score the scoring criteria using the points available on the right. And then we average out those scores to provide the recommendation to the policy board. So as we're working through things, I'll provide more updates, but I just want to let everyone know where we are and to look forward for this moving forward. So if you have any questions, please let me know. But other than that, just wanted to give a quick update. So thank you.
All right, Angela, I see your hand up, and then we'll go to Ed after Angela.
Hi, yes, I had a question about, and I'm also looking at your staff report in the agenda packet. You mentioned about $3 million worth of applications. Is that assuming that there's a possibility that everyone that applied will get funded? Or is there a different number between the available funds and then how much is being requested?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And actually, there is a possibility that we can fund everyone that meets the eligibility criteria. When we request the funding, we receive a project budget, and that budget, depending on what activity it is, we can either match it at 80% or 50%. So there is potential. We're still breaking that down because some of the budgets were a little. Not everybody used the template, so we're trying to work and make sure that the budgets make sense, that we can. And that everybody understood that match portion. But once we have that number, there is absolutely a potential that we can recommend to everyone. And I'm hoping for that scenario because then we don't have to score anything, which would be wonderful. So anyway, so there is that potential for sure. So.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Ed?
Yeah, I might mention that part of CART's activities here in the past 2 months, we've been reaching out to the public about transportation services, particularly in the rural area, but also within the Austin area. But one of the most heart-wrenching things is that you hear from these different social service agencies that have clients that rely upon others to get them to activities. And because of the pandemic and other things that have happened, some of those senior centers and food banks and a variety of things have, they're kind of getting back to where they can have people come into their centers, and that socialization for those elderly people is very important. And so don't lose sight of some of the things that about mobility. It's great that you can get in your car and do that, but we have a good sized segment of population, particularly in the rural area, that just don't have that transportation ability, that independence, that they have to rely upon others to do that. And these public transportation programs, the 5310 is one of those that provides that type of good services to the general public.
Thanks, Fred, for that, Ed. That's very true.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is a feel-good program, and that was a really good point, Ed. That it's not just about mobility. It's it's a social outlet for a lot of these folks, and really a critical, service. I think it's a feel-good program. It really is. And when we evaluate it, we're looking to which of these sponsors making the biggest impact, and it's really about the need and making a difference more than anything else. So yeah, good point. Thank you.
All right. I'm not seeing any other hands. So Chad, you ready to talk about planning activities?
Absolutely. So I have just a quick update on the model development. We didn't have a full agenda item for it this month, simply because we really don't have that much to update right now. AECOM received over 700 comments on the development of the regional demographics, and they've been working through all of those. Greg isn't here today, but he noted for me that TAC members should have received an email asking for their review of demographics, and if they didn't, to please send him, Greg Lancaster, send him an email, and he will get that over to you.
Yeah.
And then, yep.
I was just gonna say I saw that come through, so yeah.
Okay, good, excellent. We just had one other plan activities from Eric. Get a microphone there. Cool.
Yep. Thanks, Chad. Well, yeah, quick update on the corridors. FM 973 from US 290 to FM 1660. Work authorization has been executed with the consultant for that project. That work authorization came through the use of an existing TxDOT on-call contract, and a kickoff meeting is scheduled with TxDOT for early April, so that one should get rolling pretty quickly. And then FM 734 Palmer from MOPAC to 1431, negotiating with a consultant, again, through the use of a TxDOT contract. We are sending the final version of the scope and fee to TxDOT later this week, and hope to be executed on that project in April. Thanks, Ed.
Yep. That's all we have.
Okay, Ed, I see your hands up.
Sorry, I'll lower it.
Oh no, yeah, Charlie's got his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to know a little bit on the scope on the 973. How far is it through an EIS, or what is the scope of work that you're taking it through to?
Yeah, it will be full NEPA, so full schematic and environmental. It's currently scoped as an EA, so not anticipating a full EIS, but scoped as an EA.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, do look, check to make sure you got the email on the demographics and take a look at it so that we can verify what it's looking like. I think the email said that the model at this point is not going to be changed, but that comments will still be taken and noted for the next update. All right, so chair announcements, policy board meeting is April 10th, and our next TAC meeting is April 24th. So do I have a motion for adjournment?
I have a quick question. Sorry to interrupt. This is Nadia.
Oh,
Just
sure.
confirming, this meeting starts at 1:55?
No, it should start at 2 p.m.
Okay, because I joined at 2:01 and we were on item number 4. So I just didn't know if I'm and that happened to me last time. So I don't know if I'm just late or you guys start right away or.
We usually do start right away. I know today I looked at my clock and it was right at 2 2 o'clock on my computer,
Okay,
and we went pretty fast.
okay. Because I
But
joined,
that,
yeah, I felt like I joined it.
did we start early?
We started the
Madam
live
Chair,
stream
we
early,
started,
not the actual
we
meeting.
started right at 2 o'clock, but the appointment does say for 1:55 so that the TAC members can log in at 1:55 so that the chair can begin the meeting promptly at 2 o'clock.
Okay, I'll try and be earlier next time. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we were just very speedy, I guess, Nadia, at this time, getting through those items. Anything else? All right, motion for adjournment?
Hi, this is Nadia. I'll move to adjourn.
Thanks, Nadia. A second?
Second, Hutter.
Thanks, Gary. All right. We will see you all next month.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Madam Chair. See you.
Thank you.